Blackmore.
Judo. This is such, well, how can I go about this? Judo itself is such a popular martial art out there that today's Spider Style video, I'm going to have to go about this breakdown in a totally different way of how I'm really just going to be exploring everything. Not only we're going to be covering the different styles out there, but on top of that, cover the way each different country goes about going over judo itself and practicing it, because so many different people that I have spoken to really say that each country has their own flavor or style when they approach judo. So I find that so fascinating in itself that I would like to cover it in this style of manner. So please forgive me if it's a little bit crazy how the way I go about it in today's video, but I have a feeling you guys will enjoy what I have in store for you all. But sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode, folks, on another episode of Fighting Style Variant. And why is it super popular in traditional fighting games? Check it out.
The International Judo Federation, IJF, oversees Olympic Judo itself. This is the most widely practiced competitive form of judo worldwide. In recent years, the IJF has made rule changes to focus more on throwing and dynamic standing techniques while restricting certain grips and leg attacks. So, what makes it unique? There are no leg grabs or wrestling style takedowns. Heavy focus on big, clean throws, which is ippon. Groundwork is still present, but limited by time constraints. There is quite a lot of controversy when it comes towards IJF's rise to popularity within judo from many people I've spoken to and looked up online. Even the thoughts from judo's founder, Kano Jigoro, supposedly he was always opposed or indifferent to making judo an Olympic sport. After his death in World War II eventually, judo became an Olympic sport as we all know. The focus shifted more and more from a martial art to a competitive sport. So the folks who wanted to do something different than Olympic competition, judo had to do so under a different guise. That's partly how Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu developed, for example, or rather how BJJ got its own identity as a different martial art than its other counterpart judo. The strong focus worldwide on competition, and specifically on the Olympics, is the reason for the IJF's monopoly, and it's hurting judo. For anyone else that wants to elaborate further on this, please do so, because there are seriously many different things out there that I've seen on the subject itself. Freestyle Judo was created as a response to the strict IJF rule changes that limited gripping and groundwork. Many felt that the sport had drifted way too far from its original intent. So, a new format emerged from the ashes, one that embraces a more open, combat-oriented approach. It allows leg grabs, prolonged nuwaza, which is groundwork, and more wrestling-based techniques. This style is promoted by the International Freestyle Judo Alliance and is especially popular in the USA. If you love takedowns from wrestling and strong groundwork from judo and BJJ, Freestyle Judo is the perfect blend in my honest opinion. Freestyle Judo also scores differently. Throws still earn points, but so do positional control and submissions. This rewards both standing and ground skills, making it a more complete experience. So, what makes it unique in that aspect? The leg grabs, like I mentioned before, double legs, single legs, angle picks are legal. a more focus on ground fighting, and a hybrid between traditional judo and wrestling BJJ. Freestyle judo is a bridge between traditional judo, wrestling, and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, whether for competition, self-defense, or personal growth. It offers a dynamic way to practice judo without you losing its essence. While traditional judo doesn't allow strikes, some freestyle judo variations might use limited strikes depending on the specific rule set, but this is normally not standard practice. Some kata forms even use weapons too, but again, it's not really practiced much. One of the best 3D character representations out there for freestyle judo, in my honest opinion, goes to Go from the Virtual Fighter series. Now, Go's style of judo mixes in many strikes like punches, kicks, and elbows, which he uses in a brawler-like style nature, is the best way I can describe it. Since modern judo doesn't have striking techniques, he uses his judo throws and takedowns in a brutal way, like when he's dislocating, breaking an arm or leg, even hitting them in the head repeatedly in some cases after takedowns, which is what makes him such a fascinating freestyle judo character in my humble opinion. Now, Taken's Paul Phoenix judo is freestyle as well, but his judo is very limited due to his hybrid mixed martial arts background nowadays throughout the series. So you'll see a little bit of the sprinkle here and there of his judo. Unlike the power-focused style seen in international competitions, Japanese judo focuses on precision, balance, and technique over sheer physical strength. Throws are executed with finesse, using the opponent's movement against them. So Japanese judoka train extensively in randori, which is free practice, refining their throws until they become second nature. This fluid, adapted style contrasts with the more grip-dominant, explosive judo seen in places like Russia or Georgia. Japanese judo does include newaza. Its focus is primarily on throwing techniques, unlike Kosen Judo or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which focuses prolonged groundwork. Japanese judo looks for quick transitions for throws, leading to immediate pins, joint locks, or strangles. Another key distinction is the importance of katas. These prearranged sequences preserve the art's philosophy and techniques, ensuring the essence of judo is passed down through generations. Pretty much exactly what you would see in other styles like karate, for example. There's quite a few characters that fall under this category. Goro Daimon from KOF has a pretty hard focus on his quick transitions into throws, joint locks, and many other techniques. Yes, he does have strikes, but they're not the primary focus of his overall kit. Along with this power, using that strength only to secure the throws and ground slams. Ryoko Izumo from World Heroes, Ryoko Kano from Fighters History, and Yawara from Pretty Fighters are other examples of Japanese judo, along with both Izumo and Kano being an inspiration from the real-life Ryoko Tani, 2 times Olympic gold winner and 7 times world champion. It's always pretty cool to see real-life parallels for these fighting game characters. Both of these characters' stories strongly resemble the manga Yawara, a fashionable judo girl. A fun, wholesome manga anime about a young schoolgirl that's a judo prodigy trained by her grandfather, who's a legendary judo practitioner himself, wanting his granddaughter to win the gold medal in the Olympics, but she just wants to live a normal life. Check it out if you're interested. You can find the anime fully watchable on YouTube as well. And judo, being a martial art born in Japan, has found one of its strongest homes in France. From Olympic podiums to grassroots development, France has become a global powerhouse in the sport. It first appeared in France in the early 20th century, but it was in the post-war era that it truly took root. One of the key figures in this development was Kawashi Minanosuke, a Japanese judoka who introduced a more structured belt system to help Europeans grasp the complexity of judo techniques. His influence helped shape the distinct French approach to the sport. Kawashi focused on a systematic, strategic approach, breaking down techniques in a way that made them more accessible. This foundation became a stepping stone for France's unique blend of judo, a highly technical, tacticality sharp, and deeply ingrained in the culture. So what makes their style of judo so dominant? French judoka are known for their fierce grip fighting. Unlike the traditional flowing approach of Japanese judo, the French favor a more assertive and sometimes unconventional grip strategy, often neutralizing their opponents before executing throws. With many influences coming from wrestling and sambo, French judo often integrates powerful stance work and explosive transitions, making their style more dynamic in grip exchanges and counters. Their training routines include strength and conditioning, so long, grueling matches aren't really a problem. While traditional judo prioritizes standing techniques, France has invested heavily in ground fighting, giving their athletes an edge in prolon and waza exchanges, which takes things up a notch. Judo isn't just a sport in France, it's a national institution with over 500,000 registered judoka. It is one of the most practiced martial arts in the country, second only to football and sports federation membership. As judo evolves, so has their approach to it, which I'm sure they will continue to reinvent the wheel for themselves to continue dominating. Jacques from Fabrique 1 is a pretty good representation of French judo, since he is based on the famous French judoka David Doillet. Also, his look is based on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt Royce Gracie. Pretty crazy combination of character inspiration if I do say so myself. Another interesting character representing French judo, but with their own twist, will be Manon from Street Fighter 6, who also uses ballet combined with their judo techniques to make a pretty awesome character in my opinion. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu evolved from the early 20th century Japanese judo, thanks to Mitsuyo Maeda, a judo master who brought the art to Brazil. The Gracie family then refined it into a system that focuses heavily on ground fighting. Now, unlike judo, where throwing your opponent for ippon is the ultimate goal, BJJ is all about positional control, submissions, and prolonged ground battles. In judo, if a throw lands clean, the match is over. But in BJJ, the fight is just beginning once you hit the mat. So practitioners spend the majority of their time working from the guard, a position rarely emphasized in modern judo. They also focus on joint locks and chokes far beyond what's typically seen in competitive judo today. Now, how is it related to judo? Well, with discussing BJJ, I'll also throw in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu into this conversation too. Both Jiu-Jitsu and Jiu-Jitsu derive from Judo itself. Japanese Jiu-Jitsu is considered the foundational martial art from which Judo was developed. So think of Judo as a refined version of Jiu-Jitsu. But from what I can gather after spending so much time looking into the controversy of this, Judo was not initially known as Judo. Back in the early days, Kano taught the styles of Jiu-Jitsu he had learned himself during his journey. So as time went on, this evolved into its own distinct style known as Kano Ryu Jiu-Jitsu. At the time, Maeda initially brought it to Brazil, while still using this name. So sometime in the late 1910s or around 1920, the name became much more known as Judo. Pretty much around the time when it started taking root and evolved into a separate branch in Brazil, so they kept the name Jiu-Jitsu or Jiu-Jitsu. If anyone has more to add to this, please feel free to do so, because this is what I can gather and understand from looking into it myself. Please feel free to comment below. The only BJJ-inspired fighter in the traditional fighting game world is Laura Matsuda from Street Fighter V. Haraguchi, also strongly based on the real-life fighter Cesare Battuta. Both of their surnames are not only closely identical, so are their appearances and BJJ fighter background. If you know any more characters that practice BJJ, please feel free to comment below, because strongly it seems Laura is the only character using this style, because I could have sworn there were at least one or two more characters out there, but I digress. Kagemaru from Virtual Fighter is another perfect example I like to mention earlier for Japanese Jiu-Jitsu representation. Minus the ninja moves, he has some of the most beautiful throw animations out there, so don't let this ninja fool you. Asuka Kazama and Jun Kazama from Tekken is another great example of modern Jiu-Jitsu Aikido, while Jun's approach is old school Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. Even Aoi from Virtual Fighter can be thrown into this list with her Aikido. One of the cool things I found out is these styles are related to Judo too, having similar origins to Japanese Jiu-Jitsu and having overlapping techniques and concepts. Yeah, a lot of this stuff is like pretty mind-blowing for me. Unlike traditional Kodokan Judo, where standing techniques, throws, or Nagawaza were dominant, Kosen Judo focused on taking the fight to the ground, controlling an opponent, and securing victory through pins, joint locks, and strangles. Kosen Judoka's a heavy emphasis on ground grappling. More lenient rules for guard pulling, allowing competitors to engage in groundwork earlier. Even matches could remain on the ground for longer periods, allowing for more complex positional battles. Kosen Judo's focus on groundwork made it a predecessor to many modern grappling arts like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, founded by the Gracie family. Traces much of its lineage to Masuyo Maeda, a Kosen-influenced judoka who brought his knowledge to Brazil in the early 20th century. As judo evolved into the international sport that it is today, the Kodokan tightened its rules to emphasize throwing techniques. This led to the decline of Kosen Judo as a mainstream practice, with only a handful of universities and dojos and many different schools in Japan continuing the tradition today. Though less known, Kosen Judo's influence is undeniable, so nobody can take that away from it. From the mats of Japanese universities to the octagons of MMA and the dojos of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, its legacy still lives on. You'll notice they have a pretty distinct style. Traditional Judo focuses on off-balancing an opponent, using their momentum against them, but Korean Judo, on the other hand, focuses on powerful gripping and direct force. Many Korean judokas utilize explosive suinage, which is shoulder throws, and lightning-fast counters. Interestingly, because of Korea's strong Taekwondo-tied roots, some judokas incorporate foot sweeps and movement patterns influenced by Korean kicking arts. While kicking isn't allowed in judo, their footwork and agility sets them apart from other judo styles and countries out there. Now, Russian Judo is arguably one of the most unorthodox styles out there that I ever come across during this research. The Soviet Union adapted Judo to fit their combat needs, blending it with Sambo, which in my honest opinion, makes perfect sense for them to combine Judo with Sambo and wrestling techniques. So what makes Russian Judo unique besides that? For starters, the gripping strategy. Unlike traditional Judo, which restricts certain grips, Russian judokas often use cross grips, belt grips, and unconventional hand placements to disrupt their opponents, along with some dynamic transitions and leg attacks. Another huge difference is the huge variety of takedowns. Russian Judo is pretty famous for chain wrestling and leg grabs, something that was once legal in Judo but has been banned under modern rules. So these are the things I'd say set Russian Judo apart from the other traditional styles out there. Mongolian Judo is a fusion of bulk wrestling and traditional Judo from what I can gather. Mongolian judokas often favor high grips, grabbing over the opponent's shoulder or directly on the back. Similar to both, this gives them strong control and forces their opponents into a defensive posture. Instead of relying on traditional footwork, Mongolian judokas use sheer upper body power to execute throws like uranage, which is back suplex, and tane otoshi, valley drops, bringing their wrestling instincts into judo. Another key difference I'd say is Mongolian judokas often avoid ground fighting, preferring to return to standing. Just like in bulk, their strategy is to dominate in stand-up exchanges rather than engage in prolonged groundwork. Finally, we have Georgian Judo. On the other hand, it is heavily influenced by Chidaoba wrestling, something I'll be discussing in Wrestling Styles Part 2 videos. One of the biggest differences is the Georgian reliance on the belt grip. Unlike traditional judo, where sleeve and lepo grips dominate, Georgian judokas use the belt to generate massive lift and control their opponent's center of gravity. With these grips, Georgian judokas specialize in massive, high-altitude throws that resemble suplexes more than traditional judo techniques. Throws like koshiguruma, the hip wheel, and sleeve lifting pull throws are executed with extreme elevation. Georgian judokas are known for their relentless forward pressure. Unlike traditional judo, where footwork and angling are used to set up those throws, Georgians engage directly, driving their opponents backward and overpowering them. These are the many things that set it apart from the rest of them.
Judo is not going anywhere. It has cemented its place in the martial arts world and traditional fighting games for that matter. With so many characters that we have out there that is practicing the martial art or just really just representing it in their own style, flavor, from country representative on top of that, which is quite interesting to me, like even just exploring that aspect during the making of this video and just seeing from several different other practitioners of what they think of the way different countries go about practicing judo itself. And I believe that's another matter of why it is super popular in fighting games, besides it looking really cool as hell. And I still feel the biggest representative of the art itself will happen to go to Go from Virtual Fighter. And I cannot wait to see what they end up doing for that character when Virtual Fighter 6 makes its way much more and revealing a little bit more of what it has up its sleeve. So hopefully we end up seeing more on that. Even though in the past I have labeled Paul Phoenix as a judo, but he is more of a hybrid mixed martial arts character, while on top of that having judo elements in there. He's not fully dedicated to it, to the art itself. So that's why many things does not look fully like judo, besides his throws and certain takedowns for that matter. So he's more of a light version is what I can say. Same goes for Manon, even though hers is judo in a sense, but she also blends it with her ballet on top of that, which brings a whole new different dynamic to judo in that aspect for Street Fighter, especially for how zany and wacky the world of Street Fighter can be. So yeah, the possibilities are endless, and hopefully we do see more representatives of characters like later on come out the woodworks of just using judo in itself, or how the way a different country goes about it style wise in their way. So hopefully you enjoyed today's video. Please give a